Hi folks, we've not done one of these for a while, so I thought, why not? In light of the uh, coming to the end of Might and Magic 7, which has provoked some very strong feelings, um, why not cover this topic? It's a topic that's quite dear to my heart, and I think it's one that's yeah, it's dear for a reason. Something that kind of plagues the genre. The curse of the RPG Endgame. Once again, this isn't the video essay. This is just a chat about things. I've got a couple of prompt pages there to I can't remember what copy of picking case studies is, but we'll see. It looks like I haven't named that properly. This is just like I do with these on Google Sheets, just because it's just the easiest way to just express some thoughts and get them there. At some point, I would like to sit down and do some better quality videos that are edited, that are video essays, but these ones, it's just kind of brainstorming and thinking out loud. So yes, what do I mean by the curse of the RPG Endgame? Well, I think that even in some of the greatest RPGs of all time, the Endgame has been a problematic area. I think there's a lot of RPGs where the rest of the game is excellent, and then the end game kind of lets it down. Maybe not to the point where the game stops being great, but it's definitely it seems to be in this genre, particularly. It's a challenge. It doesn't seem to be a problem that other genres have. By and large, your sort of action adventures, your first-person shooters, your sports games, your you know certain, not so much 4X. I suppose grand strategy can get into trouble with it as well. The Paradox games fall to issues with it, although that's not what we're here to cover today. It's just quite a tricky one for RPGs. And if you've been watching the Might and Magic 7 playthrough, you'll know that endgame, particularly for me, is it's sort of, although it's not necessarily what I would say is typical of the problem, it's it definitely has a problematic enough end game. But it's also, to be honest, as we'll go into this, there's been some other games on this channel that I really like covering. I just don't think the end game's that good on them. And the Baldur's Gate games, like 1, 2, and 3, I think have got problems there. So what are we talking about with the end game? I'm going to just broadly split the games into these periods. The idea essentially that you've got a tutorial, an early game where you're sort of still finding your feet, the majority of the game, which is the mid game for all intents and purposes, and then our end game is when the final ends of the sort of plot of story are getting tied up. The final boss is about to be taken on or thereabouts. So I think with for me, it isn't necessarily something that's split by time, because a lot of these games, particularly when you talk about non-linear games, it can be quite difficult to assign a time, or even a story point, with some of them. But I feel like the game in Baldur's Gate 1 changes, and you've entered an end game that is separate and distinct from the rest when you go back to Candlekeep. I think that's the point where you really like something has changed in the way the game plays. You know, you kind of know you're in the end game there. In Final Fantasy VII, it's really clear and obvious. It's just the point you hit disc 3. And in Magic 7 that we've done I was tempted to, and I probably am still tempted to say that it's the fight with, what's he called, the Italian named guy with the blaster, whatever, like him, and then being put like towards, you know, the tunnels to Aethel. I think that sort of announces a very different stage to the game. What we're not covering is, and I've included it here just for reference, is like sort of post-game content or like New Game Plus, that sort of thing. Obviously that doesn't apply to the games here, but if you are, you know, a lot of the JRPGs that are on our tier list have New Game Plus modes. Several of the Western RPGs have got kind of post-game modes. It's a bit tricky to define with that with certain games. Like there's an argument to say with something like a Morrowind, like that you're almost, there's this really fluid thing between the mid game, the end game, and the post game. You sort of, a lot of people end up sort of role playing or pseudo role playing well past the point of being ready to take on the final boss in Morrowind, and I believe all the other Elder Scrolls games to boot. So it's a bit of an odd one to define. We basically, I drew up a list of games. Here's the tiers list. I'm going to let you drink that in there, and you can pause the video and say like, why did you cover these and not this and this? But it's going to go now. We've got this little table, just where, and this is, I do recognise that there is, this is almost entirely subjective. But I do feel like somebody's got to have a look and kind of make an assessment if we're to get anywhere with this. Why am I any more qualified to do this than anyone else? Well, I'm all I can offer is that I've just played a lot of these games. I've played a lot of games, and I have a critical mind for that. But many people would say, well, your view is no more important than the next person's view, and it's ultimately people have to take their prejudices as they have them. My job here, as I see it, is just to give you my thoughts, see where your own thoughts stack up, and see whether the points I make are fair and reasonable. So I've grabbed a load of games off the tier list. I've got, obviously, I'll always take the S ranks, don't leave the house without them. And then several of the A's, a few of the B's, and so on and so forth. I didn't want to spend too much time on the bottom end of the scale, because that's just that. I think the critical things here, just looking at this table, are, to start in the red column, we're talking about the experience relative to the rest of the game. Like, there are, if you look at, for example, Baldur's Gate 2, I think that has got, compared to the rest of the game, I think that's pretty weak. I think it's the last bit of the game is kind of a slog, and it's not really. You don't feel like you've enjoyed a lot of the things that you might have enjoyed with, that you were enjoying in the rest of the game. A lot of those quality things that make Baldur's Gate kind of drop off at the end game. It's still pretty good. I mean, if you were to stuff the ending of Baldur's Gate 2 into, something like Dragon Age Origins or like Final Fantasy 12, then like it suddenly wouldn't look as bad. But I think when you've got like the whole point of this is really like to have an RPG where you don't let yourself down, like don't like, because it's a real like, it's just a real shame when something that's been so consistently good throughout that then begins to lose stuff. The first two columns, I would hope, should be obvious. There's a certain amount of subjectivity there. I've included Dragon Age Origins as hybrid, and you might think to yourself, well, what you're on about, it's not a JRPG. I just mean that, like, Dragon Age Origins relies on characters to form its narrative. It is a character-driven narrative in the way that I don't think any of the other Western RPGs there really manage. It does, you know, like the likes of Morrigan and Alistair and Liliana, like, they feel like they are closer to the world of the Whackers, the Lulus, the I can't remember anyone's name, the Varns of the Final Fantasies. So it's is that fair? I don't know, but it'll come in as we come later, because there's a couple of points that one just talk about with that. The other 2 points that I've just listed here is like, how high is the level cap? Because this is kind of a crucial thing. It's not, we're not listing the numbers here. Like Fallout 2 and Final Fantasy 7 both have a max level of level 99, but it's a hell of a lot quicker to get to that level 99 in Final Fantasy 7 than it is in Fallout 2. I would be prepared to say I would think it's probably quicker to get at least one character, to 255 all stats than it is to get to level 99 in Fallout 2. So it's really just the sort of the perception of how far you can go. So something like Baldur's Gate 2, when you hit that level cap, and obviously we've done a separate video on levels, it's you notice that, and you see it, and you find it, and it comes in quite early. Even more so with Baldur's Gate, the first game, where, like, you know, if you're doing the end game content and you're under level cap, I think you're either speedrunning or you have done something fairly oddball. I wouldn't expect to see people generally doing that. It is possible, of course. Some other ones that come in there. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines obviously has its, like, rather than a level-based system, it's this quest reward-based system, but it is in effect a low level cap. What else is there? Final Fantasy X has its. If you view the level cap as filling in the sphere grid, then yeah, that will take a long time, unless you know where to get you sort of, not quite glitches, but where to farm. Baldur's Gate 3 has a very low level cap. And then Dragon Age Origins, which, like, I don't really know if I want to, like, call it that. So Dragon Age Origins, it's like the level cap is kind of meaningless, because it level scales, except in the end game when suddenly it doesn't. And it's just, yeah, that was weird. We are generally trying wherever possible to avoid spoilers in this. I suppose the exception is Final Fantasy 12, where, like, I don't know, it is a horrid final true dungeon, a spoiler possibly. And then I wanted to talk about, like, the because again, it's another thought that comes to me quite often with this, is like, how hard are these end games? I always think it's like it's kind of a hard thing to measure with some of these, because I don't know. You know, was Fallout 2's ending like actually difficult? And I've just played it so many times I can't help but do it. I don't think so. I think that these are all fairly, non-controversial views. I guess the only ones that perhaps merit a little bit of explanation there. I think Fire Emblem Three Houses, more than any other game on this list, and like the difficulty setting you play it on matters. Because if you play it on normal, it's just insanely easy. Whereas if you play it on Madden, it can be quite hard. So that's how it sets that. We might come back to that point a little bit later, because I think the question of the difficulty slider and the relationship it plays with the end game, I'm gonna put a little note there, and we'll have a look at that. Some of the games, Final Fantasy X and Final Fantasy 12 particularly, it's like I don't know if you could ever really describe the combat of Final Fantasy X as hard. It's easy to die, but you basically, to survive, you just need to repetitively engage in the patterns. I don't know. I mean, I suppose we'll go quite hard, but like, it's not really hard. It's just fucking patience mashing. No, I don't want to convert to a table, as I've told you many times before. Again, Final Fantasy 12. We're including it for, just for comparison, really. You can look at all these and you can view them and see where you would agree with this or disagree. I think that I guess a lot of these sort of summarise themselves, but broadly to go over. Final Fantasy VII, like most people that I know who, got out of Midgar, quite enjoy, the end game. For some people, it's their favourite bit. Most people tend to look more at the story hooks, but like, it's well liked. Baldur's Gate 2, I think the ending bit is pretty much liked by Josh Sawyer, and that's it. Which I have to say, I think the reason he likes it the most is because it reminds him of Icewind Dale. Fallout 2, obviously we did that earlier in the year. When we're talking about the end game for Fallout 2, we're talking not just about Enclave, but like when you've kind of done the last quests, and like you've still got like the grinding to do, and like maybe there's a few like operations or stuff that you're saving up for getting appropriate weaponry if you haven't already got it. I quite enjoyed it. I mean, we did several episodes where we were just sort of pottering about doing that. I think that's good. Baldur's Gate, the first game, has got the end game doesn't seem to be something most people I know love. There's a couple of long and rather dull dungeons. The catacombs under Baldur's Gate. No, I shouldn't call them catacombs because that will evoke the ones under Candlekeep. But like the maze, the undead maze, and then the Undercity. It's just there are other bits in it which are much better. Some of the fights in the tail in Baldur's Gate itself are quite good. So it's not all bad, but yeah, there are other problems with it. The thing is with Baldur's Gate 1, it has problems with its end game, but it also had problems with its early game. You know, it's got the vast majority of that game is mid game, and the mid game is great. But like when you're in, you know, you've got your four hit point wizard walking around a map with like wolves that do 1 to 6 damage. It's a bit stressful. We did Fallout 1. That was, yeah, just generally pleasing. Again, like the end game, it kind of depends what you are and what you want to do with it. I mean, when I first played it, my end game was really just the Crimson Caravan was a lot of it, and then eventually the military base and the cathedral. Yeah, I think some of I'm going to avoid spoilers, but even for the games we've covered, broadly speaking, yeah, I think that the story had some nice conclusions. Some of the endgame characters were quite cool. Fucking Laura, yes. And then Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines. This is a game that gets like quite a lot of flack, I think, for its endgame. I think the kind of problems that, I mean, I can talk about it without spoiling it. It's difficult to talk about why without spoiling it. I think it's some of the criticisms it gets are a little harsh. I think one of the things I would definitely say about Bloodlines is like, I think the major criticism of the end game back then was that it even comes along at all. Like you want that mid game to go on and on and on. It's a really fucking good game, and I think like Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines just does this insanely good job of creating a living, breathing world that like you don't, when the end game comes, it's sort of like, oh, well, I thought there was more of this. And I think that perhaps, you know, its own quality works against it. I'm getting more in two minds about that game as to whether or not to do it again in the future. To do it on the channel. It is a bit of a weird one to do, but like, it's such a fucking good game. Three Houses, well, the very fact that we did not just a New Horizons playthrough, but also a Might and Magic 7 playthrough. So to say goes on a bit would be a stretch. Would not be a stretch. It isn't always clear where it is. There's a definite. A lot of these games have like the end game feels different. When I talk about these unclear boundaries, like Fire Emblem Three Houses doesn't really shift. I suppose you could argue it's the point where you start maxing out skills, and you kind of just have to choose from, like, you've got all the points on whatever difficulty you're in, yeah, what that means. But it doesn't feel as clear and obvious an end game, really. Persona 4 is just a fucking weird end game. Like, just being flung. It's this whole time management thing, and then it doesn't even seem to stick to its own time frames. So. And then I guess there's a few more I wanted to cover on this, which are like Baldur's Gate 3, I think Baldur's Gate 3 is a tremendous achievement, but I think, like its predecessors, I think it's the worst part of the game. Might and Magic 7, you'll have seen me playing on. Might and Magic 7 has got some issues that are more or less unique to Might and Magic 7, and it's really hard for us to go through. It's going to be a good poster child for those issues, but we aren't necessarily going to be able to discuss all of them with reference to other games. I'm assuming if you're here, A, that you've probably seen the Might and Magic playthrough, and B, that, to be honest, you can live without Might and Magic 7 being spoiled for you. If you really can't, then we'll approach that later. I think I've already talked about Dragon Age Origins, so I don't need to go into much into that. I wanted to pick a couple of these, trying to avoid spoilers again, and just as a sort of way of comparison, so these were the 4 that I chose, and I chose this one because it's the most recent and it's got some really shining examples of what not to do. This because I think it showcases like where it is easier here than it is here, here, and here, and how it doesn't face problems. So I just wanted some references there. And then this one because I think this solves some of the problems that are present in these 2. I've remembered what this is. I think it should be the fundamental problems to address. I love it. Rename that. Fundamental problems. While you're having a read of those things. So, I picked 4 things there. I think I might also throw in, just as a side thing, we'll add 2 more, one of which, we'll add 1 more for now, and we'll see if we'll add the second one later. The other problem is the... we'll do it like this, but smaller. What's the easiest way to do it? Can we give ourselves a bit more space here? Sorry, it's going to misalign that, isn't it? Yeah, close enough. World U-turn. So the first one I'm going to start with is this one, and this is the open world paradox, and I think this applies to. Can we get the font size down in these? Make sure you are red, and I think 20 should be fine. So it applies to Fallout, applies to Baldur's Gate, applies to Might and Magic 7. Applies to loads of the games on the tier list. What is the open world paradox? Firstly, I think it's probably a put together at a rush and like arguably a slightly misleading term, but I basically mean like this. It's like when your game revolves around exploration. Oh, well, I'll do it like this. And there are no more places to explore. It's something that's kind of typical of the Western games rather than the JRPGs. At least traditionally, the ones we traditionally think of as examples of those genres. Fallout has, it's got this gorgeous, amazing world map where it's all about unlocking the world map and finding new places. And honestly, I think that the world map in Fallout probably good as it is not yet as good as the world map in something like the original Wasteland, where you really do just have to like go and explore. Baldur's Gate 1 and its sequel to a lesser extent, the sequel's a bit more like urban, but they both allow you to go out into these places in the world and just have a look around. And like, obviously the Elder Scrolls and so on. The paradox here is that like if the enjoyable part of your game comes from exploration, as soon as you start to run out of those places, you're losing a major part of your game. And this is a really hard one to get around. Another game that I cite a lot on this channel, because I think there's a lot of it's generally a very well thought through game, but has kind of a similar problem outside the genre, is Breath of the Wild. Breath of the Wild's Endgame, is a lot worse than its mid-game, because you've explored the places, and exploration is the joy. That's a real problem for these games, and all of those games. I mean, obviously Fallout has its world map, perhaps a more tangible world map than something like Might and Magic 7. But even Might and Magic 7, it's about basically going to places. Baldur's Gate 2 and Might and Magic 7 are really more about going to urban places, but it's still about finding new areas and like, where does this go? What's up here? The other thing here, the fundamental problem of I could have phrased this better, but I wanted to say this of Final Fantasy VII and the JRPGs generally. It's like it's not really a problem. Maybe like if we say how to phrase it, let me talk about what I mean, and then maybe that'll happen upon the actual title as I say it. With the JRPGs and anything that's story focused, you get, one way or another, you will get invested in what is happening to the characters. If the story is holding and the storytelling is holding, then that will save an end game. There's a obviously we're sticking to Fallout, Baldur's Gate, and Might Magic and 7 here, but there's another game that I will eventually cover on the channel, and it's Endgame is basically saved by the investment you have with the characters. If you've got an emotional resolution, that can do a lot of good work for you. So I guess maybe rather than fundamental problems, maybe I change this. I think we'll go just fundamental elements of the say fundamental elements for now. Okay, let's try this. But again, it doesn't play this, so we'll copy that, and I think we'll take I'm gonna take Baldur's Gate. I'm gonna take Baldur's Gate out. No, I'm gonna leave Baldur's Gate 1 in. I'd take Baldur's Gate 2 out. Whoa. the thing is with that is like, if you're not really going to feel and be attached to the characters in the story, then that can cause you're losing something that might be able to paper over the cracks of a bad end game. I don't know, emotionally, an ending that resolves where emotions will can support an endgame, so a lack of it can hinder. I'll just go so. Apologies for my dreadful typing. The next one's just like absolutely clear as day, and there's loads of RPGs that I don't cover on this that I just really want to. In fact, let's go in here and we'll just say Baldur's Gate 1. I think, I'm actually going to put, I know I said I wouldn't cover, but we've done it in the channel, so everything is there to say. And I think to, like, I'm going to put a question mark there. When we did the leveling system, we talked about the allied, adjacent leveling up system, your main leveling up system, and all these different systems. The level up in the RPG is part of the core player reward. Like, let's write that. I'll try to type it at least. So if you remove that, you remove a crucial part of the reward for playing. And we see this like a lot. I think I banged on about this in the leveling up system, even though it was not really the point of it. If you take away rewards, I don't buy into the idea that it will suddenly become all the sweeter. And I think that, like, there's games that we can talk about like how we address this, but it's just like putting in an early level cap as a classic example for it, of removing a reward system. It's just a really bad idea, and like some systems obviously lend themselves easier than others. There's a certain amount of programming that needs to go into something like Baldur's Gate, where you're in Dungeons and Dragons. You can't just, I don't know. I mean, like maybe it didn't need that much. Maybe they needed to step away from D&D and just say like, well, you won't get any more new spells after level 7, but you may get uses of your other spells. You might get an extra use of a level 1 spell at level 8, an extra use of a level 2 spell at level 9, so on and so forth. But it tends to exist, I think, because of this one, which is the desire to be difficult. And I'm going to put in, I think Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 are guilty of this. I don't think any of our other three, well, it's five really, I guess we're talking about, our other games that we've mentioned on this page, the two Fallouts, the two Baldur's Gates, Might and Magic and Final Fantasy VII, I don't think any of them like approach it. I think people come in with, you know, like you know, it's a lot easier to make a game harder and climactically hard in a skill-based system. You know, like the, obviously we talk about like the FromSoft games, get it really right. You know, many Zelda games. I'm sure people could cite lots of first-person shooters and so on and so forth that I would be less familiar with, but you know, it's there. You can make it climactic. But when the core part of your game is he who has most levels wins, how do you then make that end game climactic? You know, or feel intense, and a lot of the time the solution is either I guess we'll put it in here. Often solution is to cap player or make new rules for boss. And I think that's something that, like, if you watch the Baldur's Gate 2 playthrough, it's just like abundantly clear that, like, not only is, and you see this a lot in games, that like not only is John like a much higher level than us that we can't reach, because, you know, which will affect our caps, resistances, and so our ability to engage with him, because a lot of the spells will check your player level, your mage level, relative to the target. But also is just flat out immune to just loads of things. So, like, all your clever ways of sort of working through the problem, like the tactics that you use up until the end game suddenly disappear, because it's like, oh no, that doesn't work here. And that's a big criticism that I have of Baldur's Gate 2, and to a lesser extent Baldur's Gate 1, where it's just like, I mean, maybe I've just done it a certain way, but like going toe-to-toe with Sarevok's is fucking impossible. So if you've been doing a fighter build where you're looking at out-fighting, then it's like, well, you know, you're not going to be able to do that. I do want to talk about it, if only briefly. Why are you not centralized? Or why is not everything in this column can be aligned like that? It's just when your world's logic changes at the end, and like that's really, you know, obviously if you've seen the playthrough, like suddenly the systems that we have come to rely on and enjoy and build upon aren't worth anything. Again, even though you wouldn't, this is why it's such a fucking strange decision in Might and Magic 7, and such a bad decision in Might and Magic 7, is that it's like, with a lot of these, it comes down to this, you know, like these are the reasons why Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, I think, primarily put in their level, but certainly Baldur's Gate 1 had like it had a level cap, even though you could get to level 10 if you removed the cap. So like the levels were there, so it wasn't just like a programming thing, like they just did it to be difficult. It was a design choice. But Might and Magic 7 isn't even difficult. It's just there. Really, I don't know. I guess to be clever, but like, I mean, that's fucking damning if that's the case. What can we do about these problems? Like, what can we do that makes them tries to mitigate some of these issues? Well, I think the first thing, let's have a new colour down here just for. Do you know what? Yeah, we'll go blue. We'll go blue. I think the reward system removal. Now, Fallout 1 had a level cap at again, I want to say 21, it might be 28, and when you hit level cap, you didn't get any more dings. There was no more dings. You know, you have hit max ding. And then Fallout 2 basically said, well, okay, well, we're not going to do that. We're going to go, if we go back to the, which games do it well. Fallout 2 had this really high level cap, where each level cost more than the last, but the benefits were less. But again, I can't stress this enough. Like in the RPGs, it's not like the first rule of video games is it is not about whether your game does something. It's about whether or not your player perceives that the game does something. Like somebody put it wonderfully on game dev. I think I said last time that like on r/game dev that like basically like 90% of game dev is just like enough smoke and mirrors to distract the player for a moment before they look behind the curtain. And it's fucking true. Like it is. These things are, you know. But that's what magic is. You know, like that's the whole point. Is that we're trying to distract you from the boredom of the real system and make it appear to be something more dramatic and exciting. But in the context of the reward system, like, if you get 300, if you kill, I don't know, no, let's not say kill, let's say if you solve a quest that involves, I don't know, finding Lassie the dog, who's somebody's thrown down the well. You know, we're inverting that old trope. And you save Lassie the dog. And you get 500 experience, and you need 10,000 experience to the next level, and the next level gives you 4 hit points, and you've got 200. It's not worth very much. But if you save Lassie the dog, and you're in that same situation where you've got like, I don't know, 100,000 experience or whatever it was, 10,000 experience to go up a level, and you're going to get 4 hit points. Except you don't have that. You've hit level cap, and you save Lassie the dog, and you get nothing. That's worse. And it's like from a human perspective, from a especially from, and this is something you see a lot of people who are into the games of this genre are, you know, very much into collecting stuff. And you're saying no more to collect. I don't know. Is it collect? No more to earn? So I would say that the Fallout 2 solution of the high level cap with diminishing rewards. And that seems to resolve it. If I go back to here, I mean, we should be able to talk about this without really spoiling too much. I think Final Fantasy VII manages it. Just looking at the Grey Games, like, that doesn't. Might and Magic's a bit of an odd one with this. And I put it as a question mark there. Because, like, on one hand, it actually does this. It does exactly this. High level cap with diminishing rewards. But it's about that allied adjacent system. So I guess we have to say, like, does it work for Might and Magic 7? There's the question. Dragon Age Origins, as I say, is just fucking meaningless because of the way that the level scaling works, which is just incredibly visible to the player. When we talk about smoke and mirrors, and like Dragon Age Origins is really bad at managing its smoke and mirrors. It's got like it's got a lot of things that like are really evident to the player that like this is doing nothing, and it's got next to that quite a few things that are doing something but create the appearance that they're doing nothing, which is like the worst kind of smoke and mirrors. You're freaking hiding your trick to show your smoke and mirrors, which is just madness. The desire to be difficult, I think this is, well, now John, let's go this one, because even though it's linked, I want to, no, we should deal with it. Right, okay. I'm stalling for time because I don't have an easy solution for this other than just like the level up is the core element. So allow players to self-police. Sorry. The other one here, yeah, the other solution is to have really clear and reward driven difficulty settings. Tim Kaine says that he thinks every RPG should have difficulty settings. I fucking love how the Fire Emblem Three Houses, with its level up system, with its difficulty settings, allows you at any point to turn the difficulty down, but never up. I think that's great. But I also think with this that, like, just generally, that the nature of the RPG is that the level up is a core system. And, like, your default casual run having to be hard is a choice. I mean, there's another game I didn't actually cover on here, which, like, is a game I really liked. I don't really know still how to talk about it with it being, you know, still everything going on in Ukraine right now, but like Pathfinder Kingmaker, which, you know, as I've said before, like, it's not the fault of the developers that Russia invaded Ukraine, and you can't ask the developers to do anything about it, but, you know, they are de facto a Russian company, and like, if you're not going to boycott games, you know, I hope you're buying a lot of like caviar and you're boycotting that instead, because if not, then you kind of have to boycott the games, I think. I don't know, it's a complex issue, there's lots to discuss. I definitely don't have all the answers to that one. You know, but that's not me having a pop at them specifically. It's just an economic pressure that you apply, if you think that works, which is there are questions around that as well. Yeah, but anyway, we're not here to talk about the war. You're probably coming, hopefully watching this video because you hopefully get away from stuff like that. But the point is with Pathfinder Kingmaker is that, like, I really enjoyed that game. 200 hours long. I get to the end game, and the end game is just like so riddled with this that I got to the final dungeon and I was just sort of like, nah, I'm done. I didn't feel depressed and like, what's the word? Like I didn't feel downcast that I'd not done it. I was just like, you're just making it unenjoyable. Like, at this point, it's like the difficulty. I just don't think that the Venn diagram of players who have RPGs as their favourite genre and players who love a massive challenge and the satisfaction they get from beating a challenge, I just don't feel that that's a great there's a particularly large overlap there. And I think that part of the problem with things like this is that, like, people are being a bit too keen to place the FromSoft games into the RPG genre. I think because they have a lot of RPG aesthetics. I think that people are putting them in that genre. Now, as I've said before, I think they're really good games. I just don't think that they're, like, games that are as skill-based as they are really part of the genre. I think they're just borrowing elements. I think they're great, but I just don't think that they are the genre. And I think when you're making a skill-based game, you want to make a difficult skill-based game. I think that just lends itself so much better to desire to be difficult. Whereas, like, we're looking at, like, if you look at these games, I think there's only one, maybe two, I can't remember if Persona 4, I think it's just Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, if that, where you're not actively relying on random number generation. And, like, if you're making something difficult and you're relying on a load of rolled dice, I just don't think that lends itself anywhere near as well to something where, like, you're in control of it. Obviously, everything in life has a touch of randomness to it, and like, you can, I don't know, I'm from the UK, and people watch football being played, and like, the amount of goals over the course of a season that are scored because, like, the ball hits one other player and then it's deflected in. Randomness is always going to be there, but if you need to feel like you're wholly in control of it, I just don't think. Yeah, I think the FromSoft games in that sense are a problem. But I know the third time I've said it. I'm not having a pop at those. I'm not just saying that for the channel and to appeal to people. I genuinely think they are great games. You know, everyone knows my elephant in the room, which is that they sit next to the Witcher series, which I'm a little bit less certain about. But yeah, I think the FromSoft games are great. The lack of the emotional resolution. What can you do? Well, you can do one of two things. You can do the Final Fantasy solution, which is to rely heavily on what do you call it? Like on emotional storytelling, emotional character-driven storytelling to carry the game. That is not going to work for every game. Can you imagine if, because that was the solution, Fallout never got made? So some of these problems are harder than others. You don't necessarily, I guess the point I'm making is you don't need to fix all of them. You just need to be aware of all of them. I think generally speaking, like having the like perhaps Fallout handles this better than Might and Magic 7, because the story motivations are consistent. I think that's important as well. Like that you're working towards the same point and purpose, and it does that really well in Fallout, where, like, you know, it's the spread of the people who are your most difficult enemies. And like the wonderful thing with Fallout 1 is that they are creeping in. It's somewhat unfortunate on our playthrough because we effectively did almost like an in-game speed run of, like, we did it in like 3 weeks or some shit. It wasn't 3 weeks, but you know, it was fast. That we didn't necessarily see the mutants encroach, which of course they do. So yeah, World U-turn. Just like, I think, like, it's not so much a solution. Like, you just have to be just be careful with wild ideas that don't fit in or invalidate existing experiences. Ideas like, I think there are a few games, some of them on this list, some of them not on this list, some of them in the tier list, some of them not in the tier list, that run into problems with their end games because what the end game brought us to a point where, like, yeah, here we gotta say it. I can't fit it all in. Can't spell either. The end game should never make the mid game irrelevant. If you've got fucking... I'm really trying not to pick on any one game here, I swear, and I know people are going to think, like, oh, he's talking about that or that, but I'm not, because I'm trying to avoid spoilers or anything. If you're... we'll say it in in Final Fantasy VII terms, because that's one of the games we're discussing. And just I'm not going to spoil anything. It's just talking of it like it was a 3-disc thing. And obviously, as we mentioned, like Final Fantasy VII. Did I list this somewhere? Yeah. So disc 3 content. If you do disc 1 and 2, everything that's in those games, everything's on those discs, and then in the start of disc 3, the plot goes, and he woke up, and everything up to that point had been a dream. No, like that. That's that is a really that would be the worst thing you could do in the world U-turn, to make all of that irrelevant. That you can definitely have unforeseen consequences. You can definitely have like plot twists. Final Fantasy VII itself was, I remember at school, and I was talking to a friend about it who was playing it shortly after I did, and I said there's a few plot twists, and he said not just plot twists, there's like wild plot U-turns. Your mileage may vary, but the point is with that like it didn't. What changes there were didn't affect the motivations or the reasons for why we were doing things, or like what we thought the world was. You can absolutely, you can, and I want to say should do, because you can do a good game without it, but a great story where you have a U-turn on the character's motivation, where like a character sort of, or our understanding of them turns, that can be great. Like loads of the best things in cinema, and like books and games have done that very successfully. Some of them on this list, some not. That's absolutely fine. The problem is the world. When the world stops holding meaning, when in Might and Magic 7 terms, like it's not just okay, I'm gonna have to. I'll just try and avoid spoilers, but like the point where we realise that all the little pithy things we were dealing before were not really relevant to anything. Here's what the actual game is like, and like just like you also like, especially in games where you're adding mechanics, because that can be a temptation. I mean, like, firstly, firstly work on your primary gameplay loop. That should be the thing, and like, if your primary gameplay loop isn't good enough to carry you through a whole game, maybe you've just got a shorter game, and having a shorter game is okay. Don't do the fucking Persona 5 thing of like having a primary gameplay loop that is well worth like 40 hours and then making it like a friggin' 160-hour game or whatever it is. Like, you don't do that. So, but if somebody is playing again, to use the, I guess I could call them acts, but I find that a bit pretentious, so I'm still using discs. If somebody playing the game, somebody was to watch you playing the game on disc 1, and somebody would watch you play the game on disc 3, and they just look completely different, I think that's, alarm bells are ringing. And there is, if you go and watch the playthrough, if you haven't already, well, I don't know, you don't have to go away and put away 40 hours or whatever it is to see this. If you want to watch it. But yeah, this is the hardest one. This is the one that is really just. This is why it's. I've listed it as a paradox, even if it's that's not quite the correct term. How do you get around this? I don't know that you can. I think it might be cursed. It's because you can't make your game infinite. Your game is inherently going to be finite. And making the world bigger might make your game better, potentially. It might also make your game worse, but it might make your game better. But it will never resolve the problem of the end game, that the end game inherently comes when the world shrinks. I suppose we're talking kind of with this of out of the box thinking. What's it? Outside the box. Conjures up a slightly different image than out of the box. I guess you can tie content I guess that the outside the box thinking is not everything in one playthrough. If I mean something like that. I don't know if any of those things solve it. I think if you are making Fallout or Baldur's Gate, I think the best thing that you can do is to just try and deal. Just don't lose this. Don't lose this. Don't do this. Make sure your story motivations are consistent. Do your best with these things, but that is always going to be a difficult one. And it's okay for some problems to be cursed, but I think for some people there's not a. I think there's a lot of Western RPG players who don't really get why a lot of people are into Eastern RPGs, and and while I mean, and not to say that the fact that they navigate their end games more easily is more significant than the fucking waifu effect. I'm not going to stand here and suggest that's the thing, but there are things that the linear experience lends itself well to, and it's easier to do the character-driven narrative linearly. I think, just to say, with things like that and the space that we kind of have to watch, I think the Fire Emblem Three Houses may be a game changer with that. That and Breath of the Wild, and to a much, much, much lesser extent Tears of the Kingdom, which didn't handle it anywhere near as well. That Breath of the Wild and Three Houses have both attempted to be Eastern games with linear story elements, such as they are of the main quest, but with non-linear character development. So we in Breath of the Wild, obviously, we come to understand Zelda through the memory scenes, and we build her character in stages, but in pieces. That is never going to be as good as a curated experience. But it can still, and indeed in Breath of the Wild, I would say it is still quite good. So yeah, I think we just sort of have to. I don't really know with that. My temptation, my thought with this is that if you want to do something like that, you have to. It really needs quite a complex storytelling tree going through the game anyway. I think it's doable, but I think you've really got to commit. I think when you look at something like probably the closest thing on the list, I guess I marked it as a hybrid, and obviously past me was looking after current me with this, is Dragon Age Origins. And like Dragon Age Origins has got a like the reasons it's bad. Okay, so it attempts to say like, okay, you can go through these stories. We'll have these characters that are with you, and we are going to tell their stories as well, and you'll become sort of closer to these characters as you go through, but you can go about things in your own way, in your own order. Go, take your pick of which place you want to go to first, yada yada yada. The problem that Dragon Age Origins has, and to a certain extent that Fire Emblem Three Houses has, is it means that relationships exist largely at camp. Relationships we are in the relationship place. I am asking you the relationship question in order to find out more about our relationship. Has my situation changed with Shadowheart? I will go to camp and speak to her. I should include Baldur's Gate 3 in this. It's actually probably a better example than Dragon Age Origins, and honestly, we just haven't covered it in the channel. I think that none of these games, the Baldur's Gate 3, the Dragon Age Origins, even the Three Houses, I don't think any of them handle character-driven storytelling anything like as good as that. Or did I not put it as Final Fantasy X? I think that they just handle it vastly better. And again, it comes back to that Final Fantasy VII video I did about the storytelling. Like there's storytelling in that is just not possible. It's gonna take serious thought to do it in something like that. And the thing is with Baldur's Gate 3 is that like if you want to have a slight pop at Baldur's Gate 3, is it's not that open. Like, it is open, and it's quite impressive, and I rate it. I do. I like the fact that you can, there's different routes between Act 1 and Act 2. And there's different things that you can do in the various acts, depending on who's in your party and so on, what your class is, all that business. It's big achievement, Baldur's Gate 2, Baldur's Gate 3, for all my criticisms of it. Did I really put it in C tier? That feels a bit harsh, honestly. But there it is. I can't check right now, so it'll have to stay there. Hopefully it's a typo. But yeah, it's not that open. It's not open like Fallout's open. It's not open like Baldur's Gate is open or its sequel's open. So it ends up in some respects, you know, the fact that even with like a professional and well recognised voice actor and you know, actors involved, indeed the greatest game of all time for like just overall quantity and quality of voice acting, Baldur's Gate 3, uncontroversial. Doing a more, you know, not as open as many other Western things. How's it handling its character-driven storytelling? Nowhere near as good as this, which was like, what we're talking, like 30 years before. It's just like that's a part of the I think part of the open world paradox. And I also just think as well sometimes that like when it comes to characters, like I mean, if you we're getting a little bit off track here as well, like that. But like when you compare like Baldur's Gate 3 to the original Final Fantasy 7, like it comes down to like a very much a Western versus Eastern thing of like the Eastern thing of like, you know, 5 teenagers will fucking like will save the universe by killing God. Whereas, like, you know, the Western thing of like a, you know, a cleric of thingy will be going around with a death knight, you know, and you know, a evil fucking robot, the killing machine assassin, you know, like the evil robot killing machine assassin is, you know, it's a fun character. The like murderous death knight is a fun character. The you know, cleric of, you know, whatever fucking Alchema or whatever you want to choose can be a fun or, you know, interesting character. But I think for most people playing this genre or playing these games, the kids saving the universe are going to be more relatable. Even in their like exaggerated like anime way. Maybe that's just me. You know, maybe you're watching this as a you know, a killer assassination robot, thinking like he doesn't, you know, he does not know what he is talking about. You know, like it's maybe that's the thing. But I just think it's easier to get and to lean into the emotional resolution that way. But that's going way off topic. Yeah. I guess the fundamental problems, like the solutions here, well, just one last time. Watch your U-turns in the world. Don't make your end game feel irrelevant to the rest of your game. Recognize that there's a certain paradox in terms of, if you've got an exploration focused game, you're going to need to keep an eye on your rewards and your general adherence to the rest of these problems and solutions, because it's going to be a difficult part of your game. You know, you've got a challenge there, so make sure you're tight on the other things if you're in that. Paradoxically, like, not paradoxically, but like, you know, alternatively, if you are doing a linear experience, then maybe you might have more room to breathe on this. If you can do something that's like, you know, emotional, character driven, like that we, the player, want to drive towards the ending, not because we're finished with the game, but because we want the characters to succeed. Think really frigging hard about removing your reward system. Always at least keep some reward system. Well, I mean, not always. Eventually you have to cap out, but make sure that is not something that you would expect most players to reach. Just avoid that. And if you're looking at making the game difficult, you want it to be climactic. I think self-policing is something that should always be an option there. And the other thing is just stuff a difficulty level at the start. Copy 3 houses, like straight, like unabashedly, and say, you can turn the difficulty down at any point, but you can't turn it up. And then the players can decide as to how difficult they want that game to be. This has been just a short let's have a chat about these things. As ever, please, if you disagree, if you agree, if you've got thoughts, if you things you want to add, if you think I've got stuff wrong, get a message in the comments. I don't ask that you like and subscribe. You obviously you can if you want to, but like I would love to hear people's thoughts on this. And get a discussion going, and see if people have got ideas with that, because that's the coolest element of doing all this. Thank you very much for watching. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.